elevators.
All right, good morning, folks. I didn't know I'd have a crowd here today to talk about elevators, but maybe that's not what you're here about. We are carrying over our Commissioners Court meeting from yesterday. We had our normal meeting yesterday at 9 a.m. and we wrapped up sometime around 12:15. And knowing that our Schindler elevator representative could only meet with us today, we recessed, and now we are back in session here, and it's about 10:35, and today is the 27th day of September, and we're going to hear a report today from Schindler Elevator, and we're going to decide what we're going to do about getting our elevator fixed. But Dave came and asked me if he could make a couple of public comments, so I'm going to allow him to do that. But first thing we're going to do, we're going to open with a prayer and have a pledge of allegiance, and then we'll get started. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for a new day, and we thank you for gathering us once again. Thank you for your assistance yesterday in guiding us through that lengthy discussion there on our agenda. We gather back today to decide what to do about replacing our elevator, and we pray for wisdom. We thank you for this day and for these that have shown up to attend. We ask your blessing upon them, and again, we ask for your blessing upon our community, our county, our city, all the people that live and work here. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For anyone that wants to speak, there is, do we have any of those forms over there, Joyce? There is a request to speak form. This is okay here. I've got comments being requested by Dave Wall and Wes Welch and Nelda Herzog, but I'm pronouncing the Herzog as I'm pronouncing that right. All right, Dave, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. First, a quick unpaid political announcement. Our Boy Scout garden has currently brought in over 40,000 vegetables weighing over 3,000 pounds. So we're doing pretty good in growing vegetables for the needy this year. I would like to congratulate the county commissioners for establishing their budget and removing an item that has concerned us greatly. And it's one of those things that he says to him, and when it gets to me, a position has been eliminated. And I want to talk to you this morning just a little bit about post-traumatic stress disorder, which concerns our Veterans Administration's position. A position that simply cannot be eliminated. We have hundreds of thousands of veterans all over the country who cannot function. They're dying before they can be treated. They're suicides. A lot of them are homebound. Others can't function without service dogs. Seldom does the Dallas paper go without a week without reporting on problems that veterans continue to have getting treatment. Now, if you've never been in combat, you've never been shot at repeatedly, a lot of this PTSD is difficult to understand. But once you've been in the situation, it stays with you for a lifetime. It never goes away. It lessens, but it never goes away. No less than Audie Murphy, one of the greatest heroes of World War II, suffered from PTSD for his entire life until he was killed, and he was suffering from it before they even put a name on it. You cannot imagine the damage that is done to your mind when you are in combat or are being shot at, and you have to pick up a Marine and put him into a pillowcase because that's all that's left after he got direct hit with an artillery shell. You've never had to carry a stretcher with a Marine on it whose ankles are tied together with his boot laces so that his head will stay between them and not fall off the stretcher. You've never had to pick up a man whose head to feet, he's still in one piece, but his head to feet is a distance of over 20 feet. He's connected only by his small intestines. repeatedly when this happens, it just affects you for the rest of your life. You have no concept, and I don't say that with any disrespect, but it is almost impossible to understand. Here in Titus County, Steve Austin has a great reputation. Veterans need help. He gets that help. He is directly responsible for tremendous amounts of money coming into this county to help with veterans. I don't know this for a fact, but I would guesstimate that he's probably got the smallest office and one of the smallest salaries of anybody around here. This position simply cannot be cut. It would be a stab in the back to all of the veterans in both Titus and Franklin County. If he's gone, the position's gone, there's no other place for veterans to go. And needless to say, there would be repercussions in future elections. Now, I'll give you a tiny example. I have been diagnosed as having one of the mildest PTSD cases on record. In the Air Force, I was never in combat, because in the Air Force, if you can't shoot back, you're never in combat. We were just below the DMZ, and they would fire artillery shells in. But since we couldn't fight back, we were never in combat. All of these people that I told you about that were killed, those were non-combatant deaths, according to the Air Force. My late wife told me that for over 20 years I woke up screaming at night. Fortunately, my mind blocked every one of them except one. And that was Saturday, when I learned of the possibility of this being cut. In my dreams, artillery round came in, I yelled incoming, and I woke up when I hit the floor. Any loud noise, and I duck, still. And we've been out of Vietnam for 41 years, and it's been like 45 or more since I was there. I still duck. If it's a real loud, close, like a lightning strike, I will go all the way to the ground. And my case is unbelievably mild. Veterans Administration position is invaluable to this county. It brings in money. It helps people. Al Riddle and I are friends, and my comments, I do not expect to affect that friendship at all. On the other hand, I would be remiss if I didn't stand up and say that I thought any idea of ever replacing that was dumb. Enough said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, who's next, ladies or gentlemen? Wes?
I'll go. Good morning. My name is Wes Welch. Know most of you, but I'm a 26-year veteran of the Army. I've known Steve Austin for about 5 years. He has helped me in my troubles and my pursuit of things through the VA. And just this morning, I've heard stories of others. I don't have a prepared speech like Dave did. This is off the cuff, and I won't be as long-winded, but I will say a couple of things. One of the problems here is our veteran service officer is in the basement of the building where nobody can find him. I've had people ask me, where is the veteran service officer for Titus County? Now, the fact that he's in a basement office is poor, period. When I heard last night, and all this was after the fact, when I heard last night or yesterday that his position was being considered for elimination, I was very upset. I was very upset to hear that that was even being considered, that that was even a thought in anyone's mind. Because I think personally that his position as the Veteran Service Officer of Titus County is just as important as your position and all the rest of your position. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wes.
Come on up. Would you like us to give you that microphone?
Yes.
Why don't you just bring that to her?
Yes, I understand that it was just a proposal about Steve's position and that he has already been approved, so I would like to thank the commissioners for approving that. And to tell you how much Steve Austin has helped me, I am the surviving spouse of a serviceman killed in action. I spent 69 years just knowing he was missing in action and not knowing how he was killed. Steve Austin was able to help me to get closure for that and to find out that he died in the plane crash. His body had been shipped back to Fort McWhirter, Nebraska. And I found the gravestone there, and it brought closure. Also, when my second husband passed away, I became entitled to veterans benefits, and the veteran service officer, I just brought up the information that I needed, and he took care of that so that I again could get veterans benefits. And I just want to thank you for going ahead and keeping our service manager, because he really does a good job, and he's there. There are so many benefits for veterans that they don't even know about, and they don't advertise them, but he's there, and he is a valuable asset to this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm Linda Herzog. My dad was a veteran, but I haven't been associated with Steve for veterans benefits. But this past summer, our garden club decided to pursue getting some Gold Star Byway markers, and we've been here he's presented that to y'all in the past. And Steve has been so helpful, and then our retired teachers wanted to honor veterans at our first meeting, and he was so helpful with that. So I can only imagine how he is with those veterans that need the help. So I thank you for keeping his position, because overall, he's just a great person, and to keep to help other people that want to honor the vets. So thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you for your comments. Not sure how that rumor got out. Sorry that it scared any one of you. Just the fact that it was mentioned doesn't mean that it was ever included in the budget or that it was up for a vote. That was just one comment that came up, and it apparently got mentioned in the paper, and maybe that started a rumor. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
You don't want to hear about elevators? Okay.
It does sound like it needs replacing.
Jill, you want to hear about elevators, or do you want to? You do, okay. You nervous about ours? All right. Gentlemen, all y'all know that we've had some struggles with our elevator. It was down for a considerable amount of time about a year ago, and sounds like it's going past 20 years. So I asked James to get in contact with our representative from Schindler, and he has come today. Mr. Simic, am I pronouncing that properly? Yes, sir. Mr. Simic is here today, and he knows our elevator as well as anyone knows it, and he's going to tell you what opportunities we have. He's already provided me with some material a few weeks ago. I will call one a patch to try to extend the life a little bit longer. I'll call the other one a full replacement, but Mr. Simic can kind of give you his definition of what each of these proposals are, and you can ask whatever questions you want, and we'll go from there. So Mr. Simic, if you'll come on up here to the podium and tell us what we need to know about this elevator.
Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners. Kind of unusual thing to stand in front of a microphone.
You're good.
I have brought a laptop with tons of pictures. It's kind of hard to explain everything that an elevator does as far as how it works, but kind of to give you an introduction, your elevator was built by Westinghouse in the mid-1980s. Schindler has bought the remnants of Westinghouse. They wanted to get out of the elevator business, so we have kind of bought all the parts, some of the parts that it had left along with the engineer, so we kind of brought them on. Most of our Westinghouse engineers are gone at this point. They're just retired, basically. Nobody makes those elevators anymore. That equipment was pretty good. Hydraulic elevators were designed just for ADA purposes, so really not for high usage, but since they're so cheap, a lot of buildings have used them, and they're typically built to get to about a 20, 25-year range, and at that point, parts kind of wear out. So it's not your typical cabled elevator that you will see. We have a counterweight on one side and an elevator cabin on the other side. This elevator has a hydraulic pump. It's got a separate room. I'm not sure if you guys have been downstairs, if you've seen how it works. And you have a hydraulic cylinder that's just, for lack of a better term, it's just like when you go to your car shop. It goes as deep in the ground as high as your building goes. So you have a hydraulic cylinder that goes about 4 floors down, or almost 5 floors down. A couple of years ago, as ground, I mean, you have this big cylinder that sits in the ground, and as ground moves, and I mean, in Texas, you're really not sitting on rock. It's not like Georgia or anything where you're sitting on granite. So at some point it will move. So what happened, your cylinder shifted underground. And basically, when you have a big piston coming out of the cylinder, it started gouging the sides of that piston. And over time, we just developed a hydraulic leak. There's a packing, it's a seal that goes on top of that. And we've had a problem with it. So I've actually brought a picture. We've kind of let it repair itself over the last year and a half. And actually, can I just stand in front of you? Or?
Sure. Yeah.
See if I can get a bigger picture of this.
You'll want to come down here and stand if you can't see.
Picture speaks 1,000 words. So you can see, actually, this is your hydraulic pit down here.
How far down is that?
This is about a 4-foot pit, so as soon as you open that door, so your elevator door is right here, so this is about a 4-foot pit. You can see we've got a little bit of a water problem too, which we need to address at some point as well. But here's your cylinder. Okay, so here's your cylinder going up to the ground. And you can see this yellow thing is basically a sander that we put on it. So every time this is moving. All right. So every time the piston goes up and down, you can see this big stainless steel piston. Every time it goes up and down, there's a small sander on it. We keep tightening it and we keep sanding it down. So the barrels of oil that you've seen, we cycle the oil all the time. The elevator doesn't use up the oil. So we cycle it all the time. Our mechanic has to get here about once a week to just dump the oil out. So that sander is almost done. He's filling up a bucket every 2.5 weeks now. It used to be once a week. This is saving you from a $60,000 replacement. If we didn't do this, you would have to rip this whole thing out. You would have to basically get a drill rig into the building, re-drill the hole, and put a new cylinder in, which is about $60,000 to $80,000. So this fix, even though we're spending a lot of time here, it's almost done. And when we start losing a little bit less oil, we're going to put a new packing on it. So we're going to fix it from having to replace the oil. So I remember you asking me, do we need a new cylinder? At this point, we think it's going to be fixed, so you're not going to have to rip everything out of the ground.
In that sander that we discussed, how long has that been since we had it? Has that been 2 years or was it last year?
Year and a half.
Year and a half. And the reason we put that sander on there is because the sides of that cylinder got gouged, like maybe scratches or scrapes on the inside of an engine cylinder where you get an oil leak because it's not perfectly smooth and those rings don't line up. So I didn't realize that sander was still on there, but that sander is just daily, just sanding away, polishing and honing that piston so that hopefully we've eliminated all the scratches and grooves on there that were letting the oil seep out.
Exactly. Once we get to that point, we should put a new packing on there. It's basically a rubber seal. It's a wear and tear item, so usually last about 5 to 10 years. So once this gets to the point where JD, our technician, doesn't see too much oil leaking out of it anymore, we're just going to put a new packing on. And honestly, it should be good for the next 5 to 10 years. So it's kind of an unusual problem, but we keep control conditions on the ground. There's just no way we can see what's going to shift if we need the level. So this is honestly the most cost-efficient solution to solve the problem.
You said it should be good for another 5 to 10 years. Do we have a situation where we really don't have the opportunity to replace this technology with cabling?
It would be cost prohibitive, honestly. We're looking at $100,000 because at that point it's custom built. A new elevator, a cabled elevator, is not that expensive when you put it in a new building where a new box is designed for it. At this point, I have to build a custom cabled elevator that's stuck in the ground. So honestly, we're a lot better just staying where we are at this point.
Okay. But if we talk about replacing everything else, this will still be the weak link of the whole system.
Yes, sir.
And at the time, if we get 5 or 10 years out of it, eventually we are probably talking about having to replace the cylinder, at which time you come back, and like you said, we re-drill.
You have to drill about 20% of the time. So basically what happens is we get that cylinder out of the ground for backfill. If there's any pressure on the sidewalls, they will slightly collapse. So you need to re-drill to clean the hole up. And about half the situation, no more than that, we get really lucky. So at that point, what we do is we put PVC lining underneath first, and then we stick a new cylinder in it. And we seal the top of it so you can evacuate any moisture or anything that gets into it. The biggest problem with these cylinders is whatever in the 80s, I'm not sure if it was idea that was, but they was wrapped in this rubberized duct tape type of material, and they thought it would just keep moisture out of it. But electrolysis, eventually, even if you scrape it a little bit on the way down, electrolysis will get to it, or it will just rust out basically. So, but for now, we typically don't touch them unless they go bad. It's just, it saves people a lot of money. Sometimes they last 50, 60, 70 years. Sometimes it's 20 years. It's just,
The problems that we've had here recently, when we have failures, or we have service calls, or we even have what I'll describe that elevator, I don't know how far it fell. We had somebody in there who described what happened to her, that elevator. She said it fell. I don't know how far it fell. It didn't fall the whole story or anything. Maybe it was only a foot, maybe it was 2 feet. I don't know. Is that a factor of this thing, or is it something else?
no, sir. If it fell, if there was a leak in it, if it fell, it would go all the way down. There was catastrophic fails with elevators that were built before 1968, where basically they would just weld one plate on the bottom of it, and that plate would blow out and the elevator would come crashing down. But you have a 1980s design which prevents that. So basically they have a double bulkhead on the bottom. So it's, if there's a leak, it would just slowly leak out and stop. So it can't fall that way. The only
JD say happened to ours the last time?
The only thing that you would have a problem with is your valve. You have a valve from the 80s. So every once in a while they would jerk up or down, but there will be a couple of inches. You're not talking to somebody who's afraid of anything. I mean, you step in an elevator, you don't know how it works. It looks like it fell a lot, but they can't fall. If they fall, they go all the way down. So, and this one will slowly leak down. So that,
So the valve that is most likely the cause of this the other day, that would be something that would be replaced and new.
exactly. It's an adjustable valve, so sometimes you have to adjust it, or if it's first thing in the morning, sometimes the oil is cold, or if it's too hot, it just doesn't level right. Because the temperature of the oil varies throughout the day, so you will get an extra inch or two. That's why the valve is designed to level itself out according to that. But honestly, it wouldn't go more than a couple of inches. But it's a very scary situation if you sit in an elevator, it just kind of drops because it adjusts itself.
That is very scary. Somebody inside there.
So I understand, but even new elevators will do that on a cold day.
So there's water in there?
Yes, sir. Now, that water we need to get out, so it's just groundwater that seeps in.
We not have some pump in there?
We do, but the problem is the oil, since it's been leaking, the oil's been mixing with the sump pump, and JD pumped it, turned the sump pump on once, and basically pumped out oil and water onto the parking lot, which is not a good situation. So it would be, I'm not sure if you have any water sealing companies in the county that can come out and actually seal the walls. Yes, sir. I'm not sure what they use, but I know they have water sealants that they use which protect. So we can park the elevator for you. We can leave it on the top floor. They can do whatever they're doing in a safe manner, and then we can come back on a day later and turn the elevator back on when they're done. Now, once we sand this piston down for you, and once we get it to the right point, because the packing and everything is covered by a contract, I would like to re-sign a new contract with you, which would be a lot less. At this point, we've been losing money for a year and a half because we've been coming out every week and everything else, but it's part of our contract. But you can get a lot cheaper contract per month for full coverage once we're done with this repair. Because at that point, I can justify to my management. At this point, we're investing a lot of money in it. I can't give you a big discount. But once this is done, I can probably knock off over 30% of your monthly costs, which...
What are we paying, $900 a quarter, a month?
Exactly, about $300 a month, so $900 a quarter. So we can knock it down to about $200. Our mechanic doesn't live too far geographically. It makes sense for us to come out here and fix it, so it kind of works out for everybody. But I cannot justify that to my managers right now simply because we're spending a lot of money on oil and all kinds of other things. Now, that was part A of kind of explaining what's...
The comment you just made, we're replacing a lot of oil.
Right.
And why are we doing that if the sanding job here?
Well, once the oil gets dirty, we just haul it off because we don't want to put dirty oil back into the... Exactly.
We're sanding that down and so on.
Once that is finished, this heavy usage of oil.
Oh, it's going to be on.
So if we were to say yes today, we want to replace the elevator, we haven't even got to that cost yet.
Exactly.
It would be your assumption that we would do several things. We'll remove the rest of the water, we'll seal the walls, and we'll remove the sander.
Exactly. We'll remove the sander as soon as we're comfortable that the gouges are gone. And JD, I just talked to him this morning, he said we're almost there. So in a few months, we should have this right where we need
I
it.
thought it polished or honed out pretty good, then you put a seal around it.
Yes, sir.
So whatever, with the shift or whatever, when it was gouging that, you
It's-
think it's to the point that it's not gouging?
It looks
that?
like it's stabilized, it's not doing it anymore because we're not seeing any more new gouges. This is a very fine sander, so it's not really tight on there, it's just designed to slowly sand it down.
Slowly take it down.
But if you have a cylinder, if you have one gouge here, that seal is circular on there, so oil is going to seep out no matter what. So until he gets it, and he says we're pretty much there, so. And there's a stop ring at the bottom of this, which keeps it in place, so it keeps it in one spot, so it's plumb on the way up and down. So as long as that is not damaged, it doesn't seem to be, because you would hear it. We're good. And now we get to the second item, actually, which I had sent to James and you. And actually, these are more pictures. But as far as the lifespan of your controller, this was built in the 80s, 80s technology. This here is your elevator controller, and that's the what we call a power unit. Inside sits the motor, a pump, and a valve, and a muffler somewhere along this line here. So what we would recommend is replacing this whole item here. This has been about 25 to 30 years. It just gets to that point where it's not as reliable as it used to be. So our suggestion is actually installing a completely new elevator system. The new ones are a lot smarter too. We can monitor them remotely. We can know exactly what they're doing. We use cell phone lines nowadays, so we get data in and out. We know when it's causing trouble a lot of times before you guys do. With this, there's really not much we can do as far as how smart it is communicating to us. These are just general pictures of the elevator machine room, but let me get a picture where. So that's the brains of it. This board is your motherboard. It's your main board. That's the brains of it. It hasn't been made in 20 years. So the ones that we get right now is, luckily we bought a Westinghouse, so we have all the software that goes for this one, for your particular elevator, and we basically use repair boards. So when this one dies, we just use repair boards. So at some point, we're going to get, we still have plenty of them, but in the next 5-10 years, we're going to start running out of that, so that it would be good to budget for one of them. If you don't do a full modernization, our recommendation is to replace your solid-state starter, which is right here. Currently, you guys have a starter that just basically thumps on and off at 480 volts. At some point, they just basically they burn the carbon up in the air, which gets stuck in between the two contacts. And at that point, at some point, they just weld together, and it just runs your motor until it burns out. It's a significant cost to replace that motor. We have to come out here. We have to pump everything out of that blue box. We have to replace the oil because it burns it out at that point, and a new motor. We could install a solid-state starter, which could probably limp you guys along for another 5-10 years. It just gives you a smoother start to your elevator. It slowly ramps up power to the motor, slowly ramps it down, and the main part is it doesn't have any moving parts. So there's nothing clicking on and off anymore. It just uses diodes. It uses heavy-duty diodes to ramp up the speed and ramp it down. So it'll be kind of a patch. You're looking at $5,000, $6,000, but it's a patch for the next 5-10 years if you don't intend to fully modernize it. And there's your starter. One of the other, and that's your hydraulic valve. So it's been replaced at some point. It's not an old valve.
Is that the valve you was talking about?
Yes, sir. It doesn't look like the original valve, so it was probably replaced 5-10 years ago. So you're sitting on a newer valve. So that was all covered by a contract. And that's the muffler that sits inside the tank. And there's the instruction for the sander. Now, another concerning factor is in your doors, you have one infrared sensor. Actually, one infrared sensor that kind of loops in a circle. So if you don't break those two sensors, you get that contact edge that hits you. Our suggestion is at least replacing those two contact edges, simply because if you have elderly people, if you have kids running through them, typically people, it's just a force of habit. You stick your hand out to stop the door, and What happens is you have a gap about this big, and people just automatically run right through that gap so they can get scraped. In the 80s, they didn't have the infrared technology now. The new ones just use beams. So if you go to a new hospital or elsewhere, you just kind of swipe your hands at the old ones. Because it has not 2 beams, it has about 250 to 300 beams. And actually, they extend a little further out, so they will even catch you on the way to the door. So that's kind of our suggestion in that budget planner, that if you don't do a full modernization, at least do a couple of these things. And another weak link of this elevator system is the door operator. Inside of this box it's a big motor about this big, and then you have some pulleys and basically a small 1980s microprocessor that controls the speed of the elevator. It's called an Westinghouse HY door operator. We don't have that many parts for them left anymore. That's the main reason why I really want you guys to modernize. It's one of the 2 hardest working parts of your elevator, and ironically you have one on the front and one on the back because you have a front and back elevator, which adds to the cost of the modernization. No company has ever made a really good fix because they're really heavy on just a direct replacement. So basically we would rip all of this out when we modernize, and we would have to build a completely new bed plate for it. So it would be a custom bed plate for a new door operator. And the new ones are a lot smarter since this opens to the small, like a vestibule that goes outside. The new ones are actually really good at controlling wind conditions, so it wouldn't stop. This one, for example, would stop working if it gets too cold, if you have 2 wind going in and out. The new ones kind of calculate what the force is, and they would just slowly close up and down, so they're a lot more reliable. They use a lot less maintenance as well. So that would be one of the main concerns that I have. If one of these breaks, we're going to be able to fix it for the next few years, but at some point we're going to run out of parts for this one. Because right now we're on repair-only parts. So we basically, when this breaks, we ship our old parts to our warehouse, they fix them, and they send it back to us. Kind of like your older cars. So that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to send that budget to you. Not necessarily you need to do this in the next year or so, but you should have this in mind at this point, that you're slowly running out of parts. Now, I forgot what it was, so I think it was around $73,000 as a budget number for next year that I put in. I'm sorry. So
I like that figure better.
Yeah. So it was $82,000. It's a budget figure for next year, which would include labor and everything to replace it. If you guys decide to put this in your budget for next year or the year after that, let me know, and I can tighten this number down probably by 3%, not by a lot, but I can tighten this down a lot. But I always like to send a bigger budget number if it's a budget item, so it always comes out less in the end.
It's definitely a budget item.
That price you're talking about there is for doing all of this that you showed us?
Yes, sir. We would
Except for replacing the
except for the piston. Yeah. So everything in that machine room goes. We would rip everything out. You would get completely new controller, completely new pumping unit. It's about a 4-week job. So the material is expensive, the labor is expensive. We rip everything. It's a lot cheaper to put a new elevator in because it's an empty box. With an older elevator, you have to take everything apart, and then you have to put new parts on and make it work with the existing building conditions. At that point, the doors have shifted and all kinds of other things. So the door operators on top would go, all the buttons that you see top to bottom, everything will be replaced. So you will get completely new wiring, completely new signals, and everything will be LED, so you wouldn't have any more buttons burn out like you have with the existing ones. So a lot of new technology goes into it, but basically better brains, better door operation, and all the motors, pumps, everything has electricity going in and out of the unit.
Completely new cabin. You walk in, the walls are new, ceiling's new,
That
floor's
will be
new.
different. So everything but the cabin interior. So we change all the mechanical parts of it. Typically, you would get a better price if you talk to a local company to do the cabin interior for you. Our guys are just really not that good at interiors on older elevators. It just costs a lot more if we do it. We could always suggest a couple companies, or you can talk to a couple local companies that do walls and things like that.
Okay, so you had given me the Schindler elevator interior book, but that's not included in that price.
So that was, it's basically, I just submitted that basically as ideas of what it could look like on the inside. And like I said, I suggest a couple, we can do this for you, but frankly, our guys are not that good at cabinetry. They're really good at mechanical parts. They ship these to us, we install them, there's a couple companies that make them, but you can get a lot better price from a couple local companies as well.
And what are you talking about price-wise to do that? We have no comprehension. We know that price.
If you replace the laminate, for example, ceiling will be about $4,000 if you go with an LED ceiling. So you wouldn't have to, right now you have like a mesh rate type of ceiling. So So a ceiling would be about $4,000 to $5,000. I'd say worst case scenario with the fanciest things on it, it would be a lot less if you just do fluorescent lights. Cabin walls, if they do laminate around, you're probably looking at $2,000-$3,000 worst case scenario if it's local. Then they can
When you
do-
say a local company, I mean a local carpenter or a local specialist in elevators?
You can get a local, there's a lot of local carpenters that have done this before, so I can, like I said, I have a couple companies out of Dallas that do this, they just cabin apartments, that's all they do. So I can call them, if you pick a design, I can call them and see how much it would be, and I'll just pass them on directly to you. Or construction companies or sometimes that, of course, it all depends. If we do a full cabin, top to bottom, we're probably looking at $15,000. So with a local company, you can probably go with half the price. They're not cheap. If we do it, it'll be around $15,000. Yes, sir. Like I said, we're just out there price-wise compared to everybody else.
And here you're calling this $13,700 job. Again, that just replaces those two major items.
Right.
One is
The door detectors and the doors and the solid-state starter. So
but not the valve.
No, sir. The valve is good. If you have a problem with it, it should be okay. If you start seeing problems with it, then
Does that include replacing the valve?
yes, sir. Everything goes. Everything mechanical and electrical goes with that.
When you say everything electrical, what about the electricals inside of the cabin? Those get replaced as well?
We don't replace the ceiling lights. That's not an elevator on it, but all the push buttons, everything gets ripped out.
Push button panel inside the elevator gets replaced?
Yes, sir. So the push button panel and for example, all the door locks, all of this hardware gets replaced. You will get a new fan on top. This is your inspection station right now where the elevator mechanic rides it up and down. All the electrical parts of that will be gone. You will get a new station, new fan, obviously. All of these would go. So we would get new ones, and at that point you get to choose. We can either apply them so they stick out about an inch, and then you can add them on there, or you can just get a new plate and we'll custom make a plate so it exactly fits in here. That would be your choice, and at that point I can give you guys a sample. But regardless, you'll get all new buttons and all new wiring to your buttons. The mechanical doors stay, but all the guts of the doors get replaced. The position indicator inside of the elevator, we would cover this one up with a stainless steel plate, and then you would get a new one. Everything would go. Let me just get a picture. So basically, we would replace all of this, we would cut it in, and we would add a new stainless steel plate to match the existing one. And it would have a new phone in there, it would have a position indicator that shows you where the elevator is going. So it would look just like any brand new elevator that you walk inside, or at least that part of it.
That portion would look new. Unless we redo the cabin, the rest of the cabin
Right,
would look old.
the cabin walls are, yeah. But the cabin walls are just laminate right now, so like I said, any company that does laminate in the city could probably put a new layer on and make it. There are about 3,000 choices in Wilson that they make, so really at that point it will be a lot cheaper. Kind of a housekeeping item in general, since you have old door operators, is if you can get your either maintenance personnel, James and I talked about it, so I haven't looked at it, but he was addressing it. Your door, it's just like a train track. Your doors ride on these up and down, and basically they pick up everything that goes in and out and they pile it into the doors. And it can shut down your doors, it can damage the door operator because the old ones are just not that smart. So even if it gets stuck, it's still going to start pushing until it burns itself out. So it's just good to keep these door tracks clean.
Vacuum cleaner takes them out?
Vacuum cleaner and a screwdriver, it's a pretty low tech. But yeah, just vacuum them out once every couple of weeks and you guys are good. So all of these buttons would go and you would just get a new plate that would go top to bottom over here. New phone, it wouldn't be in a box anymore, it would be ADA compliant, so you would just get that one button. It's also code compliance since you're a 5-stop elevator. You have to have one of these riding lanterns inside of the elevator, so we would actually, since this one is sitting here, we would just cut it out and put a new LED one in, so it doesn't burn out like the old ones. That will be gone. And then, obviously, like I said, all of these buttons. Inside, we would replace the switches on the side, which tell the elevator where it's going. You would get a whole new stop switch. And we would replace there's a shut-off valve in here, so we would clean the oil line and replace the valve that can let us work on maintenance. That's for items. All of these rollers will be replaced, so we would just put smoother rollers on there. They don't ride as hard. All of this would be replaced. We basically adjust all the doors, they ride on a big track, and then we would replace all the door grips. Like I said, any hardware they see on the doors gets replaced, they all get adjusted. I think I pretty much covered the whole system at this point. So you see both of these on each side will be replaced. Your infrared door detector at that point, if you don't choose to do it now, would be replaced. So you would have
Did you say the doors get replaced also?
No, just the door hardware. The doors are fine. So we just replace the hardware inside of the doors. I actually want to keep these doors. These are a lot better doors than they build them nowadays. They're really heavy duty. If there's one thing to Westinghouse, they really build bulletproof elevators. So these doors, the new ones, they're lighter, they're a lot easier for door operators, but the problem is people hit them about 20 times, you have to replace them. These are kind of built like an old tank. They're heavy duty, they're really heavy. If you kind of nudge them, you can see how heavy they are, but that's why they last as long as they do. So I'd recommend keeping them. Simply, it's going to save you a lot of money on new doors over the years. Mail carts hit them, people in hover-rounds hit them.
The equipment brand that you would replace with is all going to be Schindler?
Yes, sir. So you have two choices. You can, and the cost will be about the same. You can go with all new Schindler equipment, or you can go with all new what they call third party. There are several elevator companies out there that build elevator controllers. Honestly, I would recommend for Schindler, and either Schindler or one of the four major elevator companies. I wouldn't recommend any smaller brands because they're parts companies, and about every 10 years or so, all of a sudden their parts become obsolete. At that point, we can't get any more new boards, and then you have to replace the whole controller and all kinds of other things. If you go with one of the four major elevator companies, typically they support their elevators for 25, 30 years, if not more. It's just a personal suggestion. So at this point, we recommend Schindler since we are Schindler. We make our own, we control our process, we know where to get our boards. It's our software, so we have a lot more control on the maintenance side.
Who's got a question?
We told you to go for the buildings and okay, we want to get this fixed, how long will it take to get it fixed?
My material lead time is about 16 weeks. It's we custom build everything, so we do full measurements of everything, and then we custom build according to what's in the existing building. And then it'll be about 4 weeks to rip everything out and replace.
So an elevator would actually be down about 4 weeks.
Yes, sir. Again, there's no other way really to do it. You have to rip the whole system out and replace it. It's just like having an old car where you gut transmission, engine, everything, steering wheel, and then it just takes a while.
Well, we were down at least that, when that piston failed. But it's not good, but I don't know what else you do.
Sometimes it takes us 3 weeks, but I'd hate to lie to you because with older elevators, something unexpected comes in. You start digging in the wall and find completely other things that you didn't expect and have to kind of adjust on site. Frankly, I just wanted this information in front of you guys so you kind of know what you're sitting on. You can do it this year, you can do it next year. It's still a really good, reliable system.
Well, we're at the point now where we've got people scared to ride this. Just, it's not smooth.
Right.
If it indeed fell, whether it was a few inches or not, we've lost confidence.
Word gets out quickly.
Word gets out quickly, yeah.
Yes, sir.
And you're with the Schindler?
Yes, sir. I mean, JD, our technician's been working on this one for 15 years now, 10 years. So he's been working on this unit for a long time.
I don't know how long it's been before my
You say
time.
he's close by? I mean,
He lives in Paris. I mean, there's not a lot of elevator guys in East Texas. I mean, just not a lot of elevators. So they all travel extensively. However, the good news is you're kind of on his way home from his route, so that's why he can stop by a lot of times and just fix things.
by just doing this $13,000 job, what kind of time frame does that give us compared to this $80,000 job?
You're going to help your motor a lot. It gives you another 5 years in your motor at least. It just adds that much protection to it. Excuse me. Door operators, you can replace the door operators, but on top of your elevator, but it's cost prohibitive. The door operators would be about $50,000 and you would just get door operators. Honestly, it's money wasted. You might as well add an extra $30,000 and replace the whole thing. So I can tell you do door operators, but I wouldn't recommend it.
And if we did replace it with the $80,000 job, the only thing left is the piston
Yes, sir.
and the interior of the cabin and the lights in the cabin.
Right, but mechanically it'll be sound for the next 25, 30 years. So the safety factor is there. It just might not look pretty on the cabin side. The cylinder, I can't predict what happens on the ground, but mechanically you're good for the next 25, 30 years. And we can provide a lot better maintenance because actually the new computers tell JD if not mechanical, but if any parts fail. So if the infrared door detector is not, if it's failing, it's going to tell him, go fix it. So he knows exactly what to look for.
But you think you could do better on that price there if we decided to go forward with this?
Right. So if you tell me what time frame you're looking at, I will dwindle this down as much as I can.
And you think you could achieve a cost of approximately what?
Frankly, I have no idea. I put things in a computer and whatever our factory spits out.
Okay. And
then it tells me, it asks me for a time frame. So once I know a time frame, I can bring it as low as possible. You've been our customer for 30-some years, so I'll get whatever approvals I can to give you the best price. But I can't control my factory price. And it changes about every 4 or 5 weeks. So you tell me when, this is why I give you a budget. So you tell me roughly when, and I'll just do all my calculations and tell you exactly how much it is.
Well, I need to ask you, obviously, spending county money, we've got to be competitive with this.
Right.
When we contact a competitor, why will they not be able to be equally competitive with your prices?
They will be probably right in the same range. If you call any of the major companies, they'll be in the same range. You might get a better price from one of the local companies. However, like I said, consider the longevity of their product. And it's not their fault, it's just the people that they get their parts from. So that's roughly.
Well,
the difference.
educate us there. I don't know the difference in elevators.
For example, you have the elevator industry had a lot of big companies about 20 years ago, and then all of a sudden they kind of started consolidating. So it came down to 4 companies: Otis, Schindler, ThyssenKrupp, and Kone. Those are the 4 big companies left that manufacture their own parts. They have full control of, from start of making their parts to maintaining it to kind of the end of their life cycle. They have full support of their engineers, so they know exactly what part it is. They know how to replace it. They can plug their own tool in, and they can give you the best service. You also have manufacturers of what they call independent companies. Several companies out of California and out of Virginia that just manufacture elevator components. However, they're in the part business. They just sell it to local companies which install them. So about 10, 15 years is the lifespan of those boards and everything else, and then all of a sudden they can't fix it anymore because those parts manufacturers don't support the parts anymore. So you kind of get a better holistic product from one of the 4 major companies. It's not the local company's fault, it's just who they get the parts from and the support. So you might get an elevator that's $15,000 cheaper, but 15 years from now you're going to have to look at the same thing versus 25, 30. So that's kind of the difference.
Okay. Okay, guys, what else you want to ask?
That's what I, so we went through there, the questions I had.
But feel free to give this to any of our competitors.
Well, I don't think we have a choice there.
Right.
With this size expenditure, we would need to competitively bid it. I was just wondering if there was anything about the parts that we have in place of that Westinghouse that was going to make it to where only Schindler could really replace this.
They've been around for 30-some years. Everybody knows how to work on it. We have a leg up since we have the experience on it. We have a lot. We just have more of them than anybody else, so we have guys that are better at working on it, maintaining it. But as far as ripping it out, anybody can rip it out and replace it.
Well, if there's nothing else, we'll let Mr. Simic go, and we can decide, what we want to do in the days and months ahead. Thank you for your time. I will be in touch with you and let you know when we're ready for your best bid.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ma'am, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Appreciate it.
Well, I was hoping that would get us a new interior. When he included this book here, I just assumed that was part of it, but doesn't sound like it is. So we may be looking at more than that $82,000. Now, if he can whittle his price down and get it, say, in the mid-70s, maybe we've still got enough room.
Well, if that's just laminate in there, Judge, somebody like Richard Jones or somebody like that can replace that, and it
Just
probably
panels.
won't run a whole lot.
Panels that screw in.
Well, I don't know. Then you've got the roof there. You need to replace that lighting. The floor's pretty old and cruddy looking. How far, we don't know how far you want to go.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it takes any real expertise. I just don't know. All right. What's your thoughts? What would you like to do here? I do have an action item, just a presentation with possible action to follow. All right, so we've got room here for action if you want to give me some instruction as to what you want to do.
I'd like to see us bid it out and go check with these other companies and see what.
Are you interested in this $13,000 replacement of the door detector and the starter, or do you want to go to the more expensive job?
For my part, with the problems we've had, and from what I'm hearing from him, I think we need to do the whole thing, try to get the confidence back in, to the folks that use it.
Okay. Anyone else?
Let me make sure I understand it. I left my hearing aid at home. We have, but it's 82,000, and we still need to get the interior of it fixed in addition to that.
Well, not so much fixed, it'd just be like, if you have your, if you get your classic automobile to where it's running and driving and safe, or do you want to replace the carpet and the seat covers too? I think it would be perfectly safe and perfectly modernized without the cabin interior upgrade. But that is not included in his $82,000 price.
And if he drops is able to drop that price, it could be, there still could be enough there to cover the interior.
And we can bid that interior work out. I tend to want to get somebody that's knowledgeable about elevators rather than just Richard Jones. I don't know. It may be a simple job.
I just used that as an example, but I think when we bid it out, I think that needs to be a separate item that they bid, and to where we'll know the breakdown on it.
I'm sure I'm going to call my brother over a 2,000 get worth of being working condition for the next 25 years. And the interior stuff, I think Richard Johnson is working on all that times. I'm not sure he had something like that, but anyway, I think he's good. I want to go ahead and proceed, go out and bid on it.
Remember, you talked about good for another 20, 25 years if the piston holds out that long. He's telling us 5 to 10 years, you may outlive. That piston may not last as long as the work you're getting ready to do, and then you could be looking at an unfortunately, a major replacement job on that piston if it were to fail. So you're not getting truly a turnkey, complete replacement, but neither can you go to a cable and weight format either. Okay, well, if somebody wants to make a motion on going out for bid, I'll contact these other large companies and see if we might get a better price from them.
I'll make that motion.
Motion is made by Commissioner Parker and seconded by Commissioner Hinton to authorize me to contact other elevator companies and get some competitive bids on a complete replacement of the mechanical parts of this elevator, with the exception of the piston and the interior finish out of the cabin. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, let's cross our fingers. Hopefully we can find a little better deal. All right, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Then I've got a order for you to sign from yesterday adopting the tax rate.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion's made by Commissioner Parker and seconded by Commissioner Hinton to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.